So hello everyone and welcome back to DevOps HQ. In our last tutorial, we have seen that how we can configure an HA proxy load balancer such that when request comes to this load balancer, it will reroute those traffic to our backend servers. But in our last tutorials, we have configured all these backend server, that is server A, B and C. So we have first launched 3 virtual instances, and then we have SSH into those virtual machines, and then we have configured the web server. Now let's suppose if sometime or like if someday an use case come to us that now we have to configure hundreds of web server, then how we can deal with those challenges? Because if we do the same process, like if we follow the manual process, that is first launch those instance, then SSH into this, and then we have to configure the web server. So if we follow the same step, then it will become a very tedious task for us, that first we have to launch those 100 instances and we have to configure them. And it is also possible, like while configure hundreds of server or thousands of server, then it's very prone to error, like we will miss some steps, or we might not being able to follow those steps properly, and it will cause that our web server will not come into the running state. So now it's a challenge to us that how we can configure multiple servers or thousands of servers such that we don't have to invest that much time and energy while SSHing those VM instances, and we have to configure those VMs. And also we need that the process will be very less prone to error, such that the chances or the probability of having error will be negligible or very less. Now to solve this problem, we have a concept of a startup script. So it's basically a file in which we list all those tasks which we have to perform. So let's suppose in our case, like we need to configure a web server. So we will write that first we have to install the package, then we have to pull our repository from GitHub, and then we have to move those files into our web server directory, and then we have to restart our server. So all those things, like what we have done in our last practical, we have to write all those commands into a file, and we have to pass that file, or we have to pass that script to our virtual machine, such that when our virtual machine comes into the running state, it will run all these commands on our behalf, and it will configure the web server for us, such that we don't have to do all those processes manually multiple times. So now let's create this startup script, and then we will pass our startup script to our virtual machine at the time of launching it. So let's go to our VS Code, and I will create a new file here, startup.sh. And first line we have to give this symbol /bin/bash. So this symbol, that is hash and exclamation mark, this is called as cbang, and it comes collectively. There is no space between this hash and this exclamation mark. And then we have this /bin/bash. So the first line, basically it means that whatever the commands we will write below, it will be gonna execute on the bash shell. So we have multiple types of shell, and in this script we are defining that please use bash shell for the execution of below commands. And now we have to type the command. So first of all, we have to update our packages. So I am going to use the Ubuntu machine for this tutorial, and its package manager is apt. So we have to type apt update, and after that we have to install our web server. So we have to type apt -y install Apache. Make sure that you will pass this -y, because now we don't have the interactive terminal. So earlier, let's suppose if you miss this -y in your case, and if you just run the command that is apt install Apache 2, then it will give you an option that do you want to accept it or not, that is yes or no. In this case, we don't have an interactive terminal here, and we can't explicitly say that yes or no. So that's why we have to define this -y, and after that we have to clone our repository. So for that, type git clone, and then you have to paste the URL of the repository. So let's go to our repository, and here just click on this code and copy this URL, paste this here, and now we have to copy our file. So for that, type copy -r. I have multiple files, that's why I'm putting -r, which basically means recursive. So it will recursively copy all those files, or if we have some directory there, then also it will copy those directories as well. And now we have to go inside our repository. So in our case, I will gonna use this folder, that is a startup script. So here you can see that we have to go inside cloud server and then startup script. So I will copy this from here and I will paste this, and we have to copy all the files which is present inside this directory to our web server directory, that is /var/dev/html. And after pasting this, we have to restart our server. So for that, type systemctl restart apache 2. But before restarting our server, I want to fetch the internal and external IP address, that is public and private IP address of our instance, such that we can replace those variables in our index.html file. So for this tutorial, the web page which I have created, I want to replace this value, that is replace with internal IP and replace with external IP with the private and public IP of our virtual machine, such that we will able to distinguish that this web page is coming from which server. So let's see how we can do this. So here, first of all, we have to define a variable, that is external IP address and internal IP address. So how we will get these values? So for internal IP, we have to use a command. So I am pasting a command here, that is host name space hyphen capital I, and then I will grab this. So I will use awk and then print the first variable, that is print $1 in single quotes. So this command, that is hostname space hyphen I, this will give us the private IP or the internal IP of our virtual machine, and this command will help us to grab that. And for external IP, we have to use one command, that is curl space hyphen s space https check ip dot amazon aws.com. So here what I am doing is I am doing a curl request to this URL, that is checkip.amazonaws.com. So when we will hit this URL, it will return us our public IP that is used to make a request to this URL. And now when we have the external and internal IP address, that is public and private IP address, now we need to replace this IP in our index.html file. So for that, type here file to replace. I am taking it as a variable such that we can use it in multiple places. And this will be equal to /var/dev/html/index.html. I am assuming that this command, that is line number 5, it has copied the index.html which is present in our repository, has been copied into our website directory. So that's the path which I have given here, that is /var/dev/html and index.html. And now we have to replace this. So for that, we have to run one more command, that is seed or sed, whatever you want, you can pronounce it. So seed space hyphen I, and we want to search for, so let's copy its name from the HTML file and paste it here. So whenever you get these variable, that is replace with internal IP, then please replace it with the variable internal IP address here. And I want to replace it globally, which means that in all of those occurrences, so let's suppose we have this string in multiple places in our file. So by defining -g here, it will replace all of those occurrences which is present in our file. And then we have to define the file in which it will gonna replace. So just copy this variable and pass it here. And now we have to do the same thing for our external IP. So sed hyphen I, and then search for external IP and replace it with external IP address globally, and then in this file you have to replace. And now let's enable our server. So for that, type systemctl enable Apache 2. So this will be our startup script which we're gonna use, and this script will help us in configuring our custom web server. So first of all, it will update the packages, then install the Apache web server, and then it will clone our repository. And after copying the website files, we will dynamically make some changes into our files such that we will get the IPs of our instances in all of our web server. And we will able to distinguish that these web pages are coming from different web servers. And after replacing the IPs, we have to restart our server. So let's save this script, and now let's copy this script and let's create an instance. So let's go to our Cloud Console and Compute Engine. Let's create an instance, and I will name this instance as startup script instance, and reason I will choose Mumbai, and for the boot disk we'll go with Ubuntu. We need to allow the HTTP and HTTPS traffic, and in the advanced options, so now let's click on this advanced options arrow, and in the management section we will pass this startup script. So here you can see this is came inside automation, and here we can pass our startup script such that it will perform all those steps which we have mentioned after the virtual machine comes into the running state. So let's copy this and paste it here, and then simply click on this create button. So our instance is got created, and here if you can see, so this will be our internal IP, that is our private IP, and this is our external, that is our public IP. So if we can copy this public IP and paste it here in a new tab and hit enter, so here we can see that we are not being able to connect to our instance, and this is because that our web server is still running those commands which we have passed there. So here we can see that this web page came directly because it has installed our web server. And now if we can refresh this page, then here we can see that this is our custom web server which we have deployed. So here if we can see that this is the private IP of the same instance. Here we can see that is 10.160.0.2, that is 10.160.0.2, and if you can see the private IP, it is 35.200.168 and 236. It's the same as this external IP. So you can see that how easily we have configured our web server. And now let's suppose if we have to do this for multiple instances or for multiple servers, then we just have to copy this script and we have to pass it during the creation time, and it will configure our web server. So we have configured our web server successfully on GCP, and now let's see that how we can do the same thing on AWS. So for that, let's go into the AWS console. Let's go to EC2, and here click on launch instance. So name this as startup script instance, and we will go with Amazon Linux. So Amazon Linux is a different distribution, so we have to change our package's name. So for that, we have to change our package manager, that is from apt to yum. Here also from apt to yum, and we have to change this Apache to HTTPD. So let's have this. So let's make it HTTPD, and I think we are good with that. So first we will update, and after that we will install the HTTPD. And also Git is by default not present in Amazon Linux, so we have to install the Git as well. Then we will clone our GitHub repository, copy the file, replace these IPs, and restart our server. So I believe we are good with this. So now let's came here, and we have to choose a key file, and we have to choose a key pair file. So let's make it dev, then allow the HTTP and HTTPS traffic, and here we have to expand this advanced details and go down to the bottom, and here you can see this is user data. So either we can choose that file, so we can choose this file by removing all these commands. So instead of choosing that file, I'm going to paste these commands. So just paste it here, and then click on launch instance. Let's go to the instances. So this is our instance which we have just launched. So it's still in pending state. Let's refresh. So now it's come into the running state, and it took some time for initializing. So maybe like if I try to hit this IP now, it may be show some error, because behind the scene it is configuring our web server and it's not completed yet. So that's why like our web page is not coming. It will hardly take around 1 to 2 minutes, or sometimes it took around 5 minutes, but not more than that. So we have to wait till that. So it's still in initializing process. So it's initialized successfully and all the checks are passed. So now let's try to refresh this page. So still it didn't come into the running state. So now let's SSH into this instance and let's see that where we are doing the mistake. So we are connected to our server. Let's do an ls. Let's go to our website directory and see that if our web pages are copied here or not. So do an ls. So we can see that we have the files here. Now let's check the status of our HTTPD. So for that, systemctl status HTTPD. So our web server is not enabled, but why it's not started? Okay, so I missed S here, due to which so our script has copied all those files, but it won't be able to start the web server because I have messed up word here. So now let's copy this command here and let's restart our server. Okay, so we have to add sudo. So we have restarted our server here, and now if we can refresh this page, so now here we can see that our web page is coming. And here if we can compare to these both servers, that is this one is from AWS and this one is from GCP. So here we can see we both we have a different private IP for these and different public IPs as well. So I have made a mistake here, due to which it was not get configured initially, but now as I fix this, so it will be work for you now. So in case of Apache 2, what happens that when we install the Apache 2, it will automatically start the server. But in case of HTTPD, it won't start the server automatically. And that's why after copying the file, we have to start our server. But as we have an error in our command, due to which our web server is not get started and we are facing that issue. So that's all for this video, and you will get this script from our GitHub repository. So I hope you like this video, and thanks for watching.